So we are here today at a very special exhibition at Fresno State, really one of the most important exhibitions of the year. And this is called Nobody Promised You Tomorrow, 50 Years After Stonewall. So Cindy, can you introduce yourself and tell us where exactly on campus are we?
Thank you. My name is Cindy Urrutia. I'm the director of the Center for Creativity and the Arts here at Fresno State. And we are currently standing at the Phoebe Conley Arts Gallery.
So this is a really big deal exhibition because the last museum it was featured at was the Brooklyn Museum of Art, one of our major institutions. And Fresno State is actually the second one to show this. How did that happen?
That happened when the Fresno McClatchy Arts Endowment of the James B. McClatchy Foundation invited the Fresno Museum of Art, Arte Americas, and the Center for Creativity and the Arts to lunch and have a conversation on the arts in Fresno. Basically, how can we elevate the arts? How can we make this a travel destination? How can we get people excited about arts? And we proposed to the McClatchy Foundation this exhibit. And then we reached out to the Brooklyn Museum, asked them if they would be willing to reorganize it. They said yes. And the rest is history.
And I know there was a lot of work behind the scenes because it wasn't just one museum you had to get permission from. You had to get permission from lots of different owners and artists. So when we're talking about Stonewall, I thought maybe we would start with just a brief explanation for people who really aren't aware of what Stonewall was and what is its significance.
Stonewall was an inn in New York where members of the LGBTQ plus community could go and patronize, could go and basically express themselves, share, affectionate moments, have a good time. That was Stonewall. What was also relevant and important to note is that during that time period, it was very common for police to raid what was referred to at the time as gay bars, and it was a weekly common occurrence. One day, the patrons of the Stonewall Inn said, no more. Stop raiding us. We are going to stand up to you, and we are going to fight for our rights. So there were 6 days of clashing. That was the Stonewall Uprising, and that has led to significant advocacy over the last 50 years.
So it's really one of those important pivotal dates, not just in LGBTQ history, but just our nation's history, sort of kind of kickstarted this whole campaign for civil rights.
Yes.
So the works in this show, they don't come from that era. They actually come from artists who were born after Stonewall.
They certainly do. And in many ways, it is re-examining many of our views on the era. Sometimes we forget that people who are members of the LGBTQ plus community are of different communities themselves. Some of them could be from Black communities, Caucasian communities, brown communities, Asian communities. It goes on and on and on. So one of the things that the curators of the exhibit wanted was inclusivity, and for this aspect of the advocacy, the history, the heritage of what's happened after Stonewall to come to light, to be spoken about, for there to be conversations on this.
So it's really kind of a revision, in a sense, of what we think Stonewall was.
Yes.
It turns out that it was a much more inclusive situation. And you were telling me that there actually were segregated rooms that the patrons at Stonewall would use. So you'd have white patrons in one room,
and then patrons of color in another. Yes, I didn't know that. That was also part of, my own personal journey in being educated.
Absolutely. Well, let's take a tour.
Okay.
Well, we ran into you just by chance, and this is so exciting to me because, Margot, you are one of the original curators at the Brooklyn Museum of Art. Can you introduce yourself and tell us what connection do you have to the show?
Definitely. This is such a happy surprise. Thank you for including me. My name is Margaret Konasterucci. I'm one of 5 curators who organized Nobody Promised You Tomorrow originally at the Brooklyn Museum alongside A.L. Ricard, Carmen Ermo, Lindsay C. Harris, and Lauren Argentina Zelaya. And we're super excited to be collaborating and to expand the audiences and to see how the exhibition's received in Fresno, to see how the impact can expand. So yeah, I'm very delighted to be here.
Well, great. Now, this is one of the premier pieces in the exhibition. Can you tell us about it?
Certainly. This is a film called Salacia by Tourmaline, who is an artist based in Brooklyn, New York, and it was one of the major commissions of the exhibition. We were really lucky that almost a third of the original works in the New York iteration of the exhibition were new works, and we were able, through the exhibition, to support artists in generating substantial new projects, and we were honored to be able to support the film as part of the exhibition.
Now, when you originally all started thinking about organizing this exhibition, I'm sure that some people would have expected it just to be in a historical kind of a retrospective. What were the conversations about that, and what was your charge to the artists that you commissioned?
That's such a good question. For us, this exhibition has always been about collaboration, and so we came together as 5 different art workers working in different parts of the Brooklyn Museum, and we knew we wanted to do something to honor the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising. So we were thinking about where our relationships already existed and how we could be additive, because there was so much happening on the New York scene, and a lot of the exhibitions that were already being developed were looking at the time directly around the Stonewall Uprising or the decade afterwards. And it felt really important for us to zoom in on this idea of legacy and to think about how artists today have inherited the activism of the 60s and 70s. So it felt really important for us to honor that relationship and to also to spotlight all of the brilliant artwork that's being made in our own community.
And I understand that the exhibition, in a way, is kind of a way to revision our look at what Stonewall really was. Particularly, I'd always thought of Stonewall as, frankly, a bunch of white guys who were standing at a bar. And I'm learning that was not the case.
Certainly. Yeah, it was really imperative for us to highlight the archival and historical work that's already happening through archivists, artists, organizers who have already been pushing against this incorrect narrative that the Stonewall Uprising was. I know there was that movie that the Stonewall Uprising was led by cis white gay men, which was certainly not the case, and it was one of our main priorities to center Black, trans, especially trans feminine, queer brilliance, leadership, survival, joy, beauty. So if you see throughout the exhibition, so many of the artists either are paying tribute to trans ancestors like Marsha P. Johnson, Sylvia Rivera, Stormy DeLarverie, Mary Jones, to the queer members and commune members of Lavender Hill, or they're spotlighting their own communities.
So you mentioned Lavender Hills. Why don't we head on into the next room and check that out, because that's another fascinating story. So Lavender Hill, again, this is a part of gay history that I just didn't know much about. What can you tell us?
Definitely. So this is the Lavender Hill Historical Society, and it's one of the anchor works of the exhibition, and it's also very much a testament to collaboration. And they were honoring a commune that existed that formed in the late 60s in Ithaca, New York. It was active through the 70s, which was pretty long for queer communes of that time. And the commune was called Lavender Hill Historical Society. And this is very much a playful, a humorous, a loving, and affectionate tribute to this commune and to the relationship that these 6 artists have with the commune members. And this group of artists were looking towards this commune and making what they called a minor history, but really showing that the relationships that we have to our elders, whether they're centered in our mainstream histories or they're more personal relationships, that they're incredibly significant. And often as queer and trans people, when our histories and our icons are excised from mainstream history, it's really important that we do that recuperative work, that we center our own values, our own families, whether they be biological or chosen. So this installation is very much a tribute to chosen family.
The rest of this room, I understand, has kind of a theme of caring, of people caring for each other.
Yeah.
Is there another work in this room that you'd like to talk about?
I'd be happy to talk about these works by Mohammed Fayez that originally existed as digital illustrations, which feels really important when we're thinking about the contemporary relationship to Stonewall. And very much this entire Care Network section, we're thinking about friendship, we're thinking about interpersonal relationships, the everyday ways that we keep each other alive. And earlier you asked a question about the relationship of the exhibition to history and how we're kind of working in some ways against existing historical narratives of Stonewall. And it felt really important to us to not only celebrate the activism in the street, whether that's a riot or the organizing that goes, before a riot, or the jail support that happens after a protest. We also wanted to showcase all of the ways that our queer sociality make our worlds possible, right? And so this section is very much honing in on the forms of care and hopefully showing that that's as important historically, if not more. If in some ways they're inextricable from something like the 6 days of riots of the uprising, that there were all of these networks of friendship and care and love and relationship that make these historical moments possible.
Now, one thing we want to mention is that there are a couple of artists, 3 artists, who have been added to the roster of artists organizing it originally. Did you have any idea that it would go out to another place in the country? And
that's a great question. No, truthfully, this exhibition traveling to Fresno is one of our dreams we didn't even know to dream. When we first organized Nobody Promised You Tomorrow in Brooklyn, we did not know that the show could travel. And the show closed in 2019. So in many ways, reopening now in 2021, there are similar motivations for hosting a show like this. And obviously so much has happened since then, with the pandemic, with uprisings for Black lives, with so much in our world, that it feels especially meaningful for the show, especially a show that centers care, to be up again in a different location. And so we hope that the students at Fresno State and also members of the Fresno community at large feel comfortable coming back again and again. And I'm really looking forward to being in touch with Cindy and Megan and just hearing how people are adding their own energy to the show.
it must be very rewarding to be able to come back a couple of years later and kind of relive this.
Certainly, it really, yeah. I'm still kind of in awe, but certainly the legacy of Stonewall is universal, and there were really important precedents for queer and trans activism here in the West Coast. So we really appreciate Cindy and Megan's expertise in expanding that history and deepening that context. And yeah, it feels like a real honor to have the exhibition gain this more expansive sensibility.
And now we're going to chat with Liz Looney from the McClatchy Foundation, who's going to talk a little bit about how all this came together.
Thank you. This actually started about 2 years ago in the planning stages when we contacted Arte Medicus and the Fresno Art Museum and Fresno State about coming together for a major art collaborative. And a year ago, we announced a $1 million investment in that collaborative. So today is the kickoff, the first exhibition in that collaborative, and it is the Nobody Promised You Tomorrow Art 50 Years After Stonewall. It is moving, it is powerful, and we are very proud to be a part of this.
So this show is the first of 3 major exhibitions that I guess go all the way through
2022?
2022.
Yeah.
So it's like kind of like a season of exhibitions. Just tell us a little bit about the upcoming shows at Arte and
So the
Art
next
Museum.
exhibition, after Nobody Promised You Tomorrow, will open on March 4th of 2022 at Arte Americas, and it is called Boom Oaxaca. And Arte is going to take a look at the immigrant experience of Oaxacans that have come to this community, to Central California. What has that experience been like? And they have actually taken stories from Oaxacan immigrants and have sent those stories to mural artists down in Oaxaca who are creating giant murals to depict that immigrant experience. It will last for 5 months, and then opening in July of 2022 at the Fresno Art Museum will be a very powerful exhibit called A Queen Within Adorned Archetypes. And that talks about how fashion over centuries has depicted women and defined their character, their image, like the empress, the warrior, Mother Nature, the protector, all these ways that we portray women. And this really fits well with the Fresno Art Museum's feminist art background. They're very strong with that, and their connection back to Fresno State and the Judy Chicago exhibit and the start of the feminist art movement. So it's a 3 exhibitions, all depicting the power of culture to change our lives, to make a difference, and to connect us all as humans.
And I know that you're really hoping that people will come from outside the Fresno area to enjoy these exhibitions.
Absolutely. If you think about it, Fresno is the geographic center of the state. We're just a day trip, so we can drive to Fresno, come to any of the 3 exhibitions and experience them and enjoy them. So all the exhibitions have a lot of online exposure through their websites, and I think that is increasing every time we do a program. So there's other ways to connect too, but we welcome people from all over to come and experience art in Fresno. One of our missions at the McClatchy Fresno Arts Endowment is to help create a cultural arts hub here in Fresno and make us known as a regional destination for high-end cultural arts, impactful exhibits, and ones that really speak to the power of culture.
It must be really special to be involved in organizing something like this for so long, and then to be here on opening day and just see it all.
Opening days are always fabulous and exciting. I remember that from my years at the Met. All this work and planning that you do, and then all of a sudden it feels like we're open, we're ready, and you're experiencing it.
So we are back with Cindy to talk about one of the pieces that has a connection to the Central Valley. This is a beautiful piece. And this is something that a visitor would see here in Fresno, but if they'd gone to the show in Brooklyn, it wasn't there.
Indeed.
How did this happen?
So when we reorganized the exhibit, one of the things that we wanted was to be more inclusive of West Coast artists, because this exhibit was going to be shown in the West Coast, and the original exhibit had a lot more East Coast artists. So we added Marcel Alcala to the exhibit along with 2 other artists. And what's particularly meaningful about Marcel's works, we have 3 of them on display, is that Marcel was born in Santa Ana, however, has very deep roots in the Central Valley. Marcel's grandparents used to work in the fields in the valley, and that's what the valley, it's a core aspect of the valley. And I think it's very special when we see one of our own to be in such a wonderful and powerful exhibit such as this. So that's a little bit on that piece. And there's a lot of iconography that's very California and readily recognizable. For example, the missions, a lot of the controversy around the wall.
And I see the reference to just the border of the USA.
Yes. To the police
station, yeah.
Yes, references to pre-Columbian iconography, right? So some indigenous references.
And then sort of the rainbow.
Yes.
And I'm not sure if that's a
It could be tunnels.
manhole cover or
Yes.
one. Yeah.
So there's,
Interesting.
I think that anybody that looks at Marcel's piece will be able to take away something that they recognize. So it's a lot of fun, and I do hope that people will enjoy not just Marcel's works, but everybody's works in this exhibit.
There is actually another auxiliary or a satellite exhibition related to this one. Tell us about that.
Yes, it's going to be at Fresno City College's Art Space Gallery. It is called Constellating Care Networks, and it's a lot more Fresno-centric. It's going to be tracking and mapping a lot of the different LGBTQ plus groups, as well as showing some ephemera and some artistic items. And it's basically meant to create even broader conversations, but conversations that are also grounded in Fresno and are in direct relationship with this larger exhibit. So we do hope you will visit that as well.
Lots of great stuff to see.
Yes, it sure is very exciting.
Well, I mean, one thing that I would like to tell people is that this exhibition is such a surprise to me. It's so moving, and it's so much broader and deeper than I was expecting. We kind of associate Stonewall really with violence, with the uprising, which is important, but also it's just the magnitude of the caring that you see here and the insight and the way that we can take a different look at an important historical event. So thank you. Thank you for hosting us today. Tell us how people can come see the exhibition. I know that sometimes people are a little hesitant because they know it's at Fresno State and they're worried about the parking and COVID and all that stuff. So tell us about that.
I'm happy to share, and just listening to you speak made me a little emotional, and I think that that's what we want with this exhibit, to touch people's hearts. So thank you.
You're welcome.
And I'd like to say that this exhibit is free and open to the public. So all you need to do is come to Fresno State, come to the Phoebe Conley Art Gallery, come to our gallery. We are open Tuesday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., and on Saturdays from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. So please come and enjoy, sit with the art, ask thoughtful questions, and let us know what you think.
And the exhibit runs through October 31st, so you do have plenty of time to come and check it out, but don't put it off to the last minute. It's one that you will not want to miss. Thanks for being with us today.